Okay, I think it's working. So let's take a look at what's going on here. I'm Jason. Welcome to the very first episode of Display Dat coding sessions. This to be very brief. Excuse me. Why would I have gum in my mouth? I tell you what. Um, to be very brief, Display Dat is a tool for displaying information or data in some fun way. And it's a way for me to express some code and interesting ways to approach and solve problems. One of the things that happened is my son got some new monitor, or not new, but old monitors, and new for us monitors that I'm going to use with old computers to display information around the house to kind of give my old home a bit of a smarter feel and show my schedule or show some pictures or some inspirational quotes or whatever, and that's what I'm working on. So let's get started. I'm gonna erase my environment folder and stuff like that and try to get started from scratch to maybe show anybody who's interested in getting started with this. And because this is such an early and simple project, I think anybody who is learning Python or has learned it through university should be able to easily kind of pick up and start to contribute to this in some fun way. And let's see how it goes, But I hope that I find other people who can contribute to it and build on it and make something kind of cool and interesting out of this. Yeah, let's get started. So I have Visual Studio Code open here, and then I have my terminal, and this is kind of what it looks like now. Well, it is what it looks like now. So it's the application. It's literally an SVG file. I could have done like HTML or something like that, but I thought it'd be fun to do it with SVG. And with the SVG, I turn it into a template that is rendered using Flask and a few other bits and bobs to glue it all together and make something for the browser to see. And for now, I'm just going to set up Firefox with a plugin that reloads the page periodically, and it will keep the page up to date. I think it's still running here. Yeah, it is. Let's take a look. Yeah, so every time I refresh the page, it'll update with the time and show information. So now it's 9:19. So if I press there, boom, changed 9:19. Cool. I was imagining something with the weather. It's not thunderstorms now. The only thing that's dynamic is this part, and not even this. It's close, but it ain't there. But I was thinking of doing something where we have like the weather. We talk about the wind. We talk about if there's thunderstorms, things like that. Put my schedule on here, maybe a calendar, and just put the 1 day schedule here in some format or another. And then maybe have some webcams attached to the computer or remote webcams and display snapshots of the information there. I've got this idea on the side of putting my I have some bird nests or bird houses on my property, and I thought it'd be fun to stick some cameras in there. So one day maybe we'll have this, So some information about my Minecraft server. So I think that would be really fun. So show what usernames are available or logged in to the Minecraft server, how many people are there, and so on and so forth. I think that'd be really fun. This was supposed to be a place for like inspirational quotes. It could be something else. It could be maybe, messages from family members, that are in a different town. They could drop off stuff. Maybe some kind of feed from Telegram or something like that. I think it'd be fun. And then a Trello board. So Trello has its own API too, so I thought it'd be fun to connect to that and maybe list off tasks from a particular column on a particular Trello board, so that I know like my shopping list or things I need to buy or activities that I want to do for the day. or get done. It'd be really fun to do. So that's just a general idea. And to play with the concept, I was able to make the SVG with these templates. And every time it reloads the page, it updates the information. So that's the application. Let's see how to install it from scratch. So the first thing we're going to do, maybe I'll get it from the Git repository. Yeah, so here's my GitHub account. I have DisplayDat here, and I've got some basic instructions. Let's see if they all work. That might be a good way to validate that this is all working here. Yeah, so I'll start fresh. Let me start with just a directory somewhere in my projects folder. Actually, I'll close this and start a new one with something like that. Something like this, and then I'll make a new folder, live stream, and then I'll go into there and I'll do a git clone and grab this code here. Boom. Does its magic, and now I have this folder DisplayDat that I can go into here. Now I'm going to take a look here in the applications folder. I've got some Python files and some templates and that kind of magic, but what I want to do is maybe make this bigger here. What I want to do now, is set up the environment, and to do that, actually, you know, I'll go half. I'll do it like this, and this one over here. Yeah, this will work. Okay, so I got my instructions on the left. So I cloned it. I jumped into the DisplayDat folder, and now I'm going to do the different parts. So, I didn't create my virtual environment in the documentation. I'll need to update that. So let's do that. So first thing I need to do is set up a virtual environment. Yeah, the reason you set up a virtual environment is to kind of isolate the packages, the Python packages that you're working with, so it doesn't interfere with anything else. And if there's some change or installation that happens, you don't get that bad stuff that's happening. Believe it or not, whenever there's updates, there can be good and bad things that happen, not just good things, and you want to make sure that you can kind of be in more control of that situation. Yeah, especially if you work with multiple projects, it's quite helpful. But let's see. Oh, no, I do have the instructions here. Lucky me. Okay, so let's do this. Python M, venv, and then env is just the name, just env. I could call it DisplayDat or whatever, but it's a very common thing to just use the env name. So I do that, and it does its little magic. And it makes an environment that I can jump into. Source, env, env, bin, activate. And what happens is, you see on the left there, I now have this env file or name. And that is just a visual indicator that's showing me that I'm in a special virtual environment. And now I can then install all of the required packages. So inside, let's see, actually, you know what? I'm going to do that again. I'm going to remove this. What is it? It's not like disconnect, is it? what is it called? Deactivate and virtual. Yeah, let's see. Is it just good old Stack Overflow, right? Yeah, deactivate. Okay, all right. Boom! You deserve it, man. Deactivate. There we go. Okay, so we leave that. And I removed the env folder because I want to put it inside the actual application folder here. I think that's a little cleaner because I have some documentation and other stuff that I'm putting in outside of that that's also version controlled as well. So let's get started. Python, actually, little trick here, if you use Control R when you're in the bash terminal, it does this reverse search. I learned this from a good friend of mine named Ulf, and it blew my mind. And I've changed the way I do the terminal forever. It's really great if you're like, I knew there was this command that had something in it, like source or something. So I can just type source, and then there it is, right? Which is quite handy for finding old commands. Of course, I can use the arrows, but there's some other ways that are better too, depending on what you want. So Python -m venv, and then the name of the folder. So does its magic, and here we are. We have the end folder, and I'll jump into that environment just with source. There we go. So there we are. We're ready to go. Now I want to install all the required packages. So what I've made in the repository is this requirements.txt file, and it contains a list of all of the applications or all of the Python libraries from a third-party destination need to be installed using pip install. Now, of course, I could just manually go and do that. In fact, let's take a look at the file really quick. Actually, the right way would be something like less and then requirements. So here it is. Wow. So we got Flask and Python.env, PyTZ, Python time zone is what it stands for. Request, super handy. I love requests. It's really nicely done tool for doing API requests. And then pip requests, recs. Of course, I didn't have to have it here, but what I want to do is if somebody goes and makes an application, I want to make sure that I can quickly find any imports that were made. I know a lot of novice people might jump into this project. So I'm keeping it here, and I'd use it myself if I work for a long period of time and forget to update my requirements.txt. So I'll run this periodically because it checks for imported libraries that I don't have in this list and builds me a requirements.txt from it, which I like. So yeah. Something to note here is for some of you who've seen these this request.txt file, you might see like Flask equals and then have like a version number 1.1, 1.2, 2.0, whatever. And those are the version number of that Flask that you want to install, a very specific thing. And in most cases, that's an important thing to have, especially when you're doing production deployments and you want to have a very controlled environment. You don't want to worry about any security vulnerabilities, or you're happy with the way the API is working there, you can stick with this particular version. In our case, because it's such a young project, I'm leaving them open. So it just gets the latest version. And I just build with that. I like it that way for now. And if we somehow need to restrict it, then I'll go and make a version of a particular file. I could be wrong. This could be the absolute worst way to do it, but that's what I'm doing. So let's install it. So I could go line by line and do pip install Flask, but there's a cool little shortcut that I could do. Sorry about the layout. Let me maybe make it a little smaller. Pip install -R, which is the to install from a requirements txt file or some other text file, requirements txt, and then it does its magic. It does its thing, installs a bunch of wheels and Python packages, and works pretty good. It's now has them, so I think I could even look up like oh well, let's not use that. But anyways, there they are. Do I have this list? Yeah, pip list. That's what it is. So here's after doing that installation, what has been set up and running here. So instead of a huge, massive list of different files, it just gives me the version number and the name of the packages from this virtual environment, which is quite nice. I'd much rather have it this way than have my entire operating system's Python packages listed out. It would be silly to install all that stuff on a server environment or some computer that doesn't need to have that stuff. So there it is. I'm now going to, once I have all the Python packages installed, I should be able to jump into other parts of the application and even run it. But before I do that, I'm going to show something here. Actually, you know, it might have some confidential stuff, so I'm going to double check it in my other screen here beforehand. So what I'm doing is I'm looking into my env file. Yeah, I don't have one at all here, so we'll see what happens. Of course, it's a new project. Silly me, silly me. Yeah, okay. So, let's take a look. We have a env file. It's a little hidden here. You can see I have this env template, which has nothing to do with this, by the way, but it's my environment variables template. So basically, I'm going to copy that to just .env. At least where I've worked on other Python projects, there's usually a template, and then you have your own environment variables. The reason you don't have the .env inside the repository is there are shared keys and private information or specific settings that might be in your environment that you don't want to share with others, and that's really important. So I'm just going to copy this file over, and let's take a look at the file. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I have my Rapid API key, which I'm not using Rapid API yet, but I just made a string for it to play around. And then I have the time zone set to Helsinki because Finland is awesome. And Oulu's better, but they don't have a specific one for Oulu. But anyways, yeah, so that's the file now, and it should work straight off the bat. I don't have any, you know, special settings yet, but I wanted to be ready for it when they come along, have a place for them. And it makes anybody who needs to set up their environment variables, it makes it a lot easier just to add something there and not have to worry about setting all that up. I tried to make it easier for everybody. Okay, so let's just run it. So to run the application, I have several Python files, but the one I want to run is dashboard.py. And so I'll just do it this way. I know how the program runs, so I'll just do it that way. There's my URL. I'm going to copy the link and put it like this. And then, oops. Whoa. Okay, there she is. So imagine a screen turned 90 degrees, side, you know, on its side in portrait mode, I guess is the term, and at 100% zoom and then full screen. This is how it would kind of look. There'd be no scrolling or anything. It'd just be a static screen. There's no need for a keyboard or mouse, or I don't want touchscreen stuff yet. I don't have a touchscreen for this, so I'm just going to leave it alone and work with it this way. Yeah, and there it is, similar to what we had seen before. And with the development environment running, we're able to refresh and see it, um, this debug information and verbose logging is occurring here with that environment. So now with that running, we have our environment. We have our development environment ready and all of its settings. Now we want to jump into looking at the code. So that's what we're going to do now. So if you have Visual Studio Code, I would recommend it. I think it's pretty nice. So we're going to open a folder, and we're going to jump to our projects. And what did I call it? It was the live stream. Yeah, live stream. Display that and open that up. Okay, yeah, I'll trust it. I made it. Yeah, so let's take a look at the file. So we have the dashboard.py, which is the one that I execute. You can see here that it opens up a whole bunch of different things here. I don't know what CMath is doing here. Why is it here? Anyways, what the heck? So we have Flask. We get the template renderer. And then we go to a specific file called the extractors file, which I'll show you in a minute, and grab a whole bunch of different methods. And then we start everything up. App equals Flask. If you look up any Flask tutorial, this is basically what they tell you to do. We then go and use the app to configure all my settings, which is in the config dev config object. And it's inside of this config.py. And it automatically loads that file and imports the stuff into the app, which is a nice, convenient thing. I learned about that just the other day. Then we have our methods, or you might want to call them controllers. But we have dashboard.py, or the dashboard file, or method. And it's what is kind of like the main screen of the tool. And we have a decorator here, app.route, which just basically is telling, it's a Flask magic thing that tells you that at the root of the folders, you're going to run this method, and it's going to compute all these things. And after it does that, it's going to take this template file, and with this content or context, and render that information. So find all the things in the file and change them up so that it can display the content correctly in the final view. Maybe I'll show a little bit of that as well. We'll keep it under 30 minutes. We're at, what, 23 minutes? So we'll keep it around 30 minutes. And I think that then we can end here and see what the community thinks. Is this something that you want to be a part of and join in on? I think it'd be fun. Let's take a look. So let's jump around to the different files from here. We've got the dashboard file, and we grabbed different things from this extractor file. So let's look at that first. So the extractor file is just a Python file that I set up in the same directory as the dashboard. So it's easy to import. And there's specific sets of methods of tools that I want to use. So for example, displaying the time, I have the time method, and it returns this Pi time zone thing with the Helsinki setup, which I need to use for my settings. I haven't done that yet. It localizes all that information of my server and then strings that into a nice format that's human readable. right? And then it returns that human readable string to my dashboard file. So the time, it puts it in this variable, right? So that's how the return happens. Same thing with picture. Right now I'm just returning a URL for a cat picture. I love PlaceKitten. Kudos to those guys for making it. It's great when I don't have really a picture to use and I want something a little more dynamic. Then I was thinking about something with the weather, the inspiration, so quotes and things like that, and then something for the Trello cards. As you remember, I reviewed those. And this is each one of those sections. I want to kind of provide those variables and what should be shown in those areas. Yeah, that's how this file works. I could go into the details about how Python works with these, but I think the basic principle is you have a method that accepts some information. In this case, it doesn't need to worry about it. And then it returns that information that it processes into this location, which is whoever called it gets it back this way over here. So here's a method, and by using these things here, these little guys, I'm able to show that I want you to execute this, and whatever it returns, put it in here, right? Simple Python stuff. And yeah, that's the basic premise of these. Now, the next step with this is, or just to tell you, I've been creating these, they're called skeleton methods. So they're just placeholders and they might be returning some default data or something like that. So I've created these skeleton methods to encourage anybody who wants to play around to add to them. I've even included some of my research. So I found openweathermap.org, and there's some kind of an API that you can use. So why not use that to go and get your local weather? Same thing with the pictures. Is there a kind of a picture database that we should pull from? And then the Trello cards, I actually put a reference in the document in my code of the actual API page for showing a single board and so forth. So it's quite nice. I try to make it as easy as possible to jump into this and maybe start contributing somewhere. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Let's go to the next file. So the next one is config.py, right? So we're using this app config from object config blah blah blah. So config is the name of the file, like config.py, config, and inside is dev config, which is some kind of an object. I know that it's an object not because it's a string or anything like that, but basically how it's labeled with the capital D and the capital C, this camel casing that occurs. I can pretty much guess in Python, because of the standards that people write in Python, that this is an object. And if I jump into it, sure enough, it's a class. It's an object. So a class for making objects. And sure enough, I got config and I've got dev config. Now, I won't get into too much detail here, but basically I'm calling dev config, remember? And in dev config, it also grabs the config. So it took everything that was in here, this stuff, and basically plastered it before any of this stuff, which is quite nice. So I'm able to inherit the different information, because right now we're just doing development environment, but eventually we'll have some kind of production environment, and we have different settings depending on those situations. And I can load up those different settings at the specific times, which is quite nice. Looks like I have an unused method, .env. May not need this one. We'll see. Load down the path. I don't know. We'll see. And oh, we are. Yeah. Why is it complaining? What's its deal here? Maybe it's not importing. How how do I check it? No definition found for .env. Do I not have it installed in my environment? Let's take a look. Oops, I want to do it this way actually because I need to be my env into my env environment. Let me just open up a terminal, and remember this is in my environment. So if I try to import something that doesn't exist, like beautiful soup, which is something I have on my computer. It doesn't exist. But if I import Flask, it doesn't work. Okay, well, I'll figure it out. But anyways, let's just try loading this line and see what it says here. Yeah, it seems to load. Sorry. Load oops. New. Okay, nice. Break it. Load dot env. Yeah, definitely something there. And now. Yeah, it seems to be working because it loads it, but I just don't know what this error is that it's trying to tell me, or is there some kind of warning, or I don't know. It's weird. Oh well, who cares? As long as it's running right now, I think we're okay. So let's see, is there any other files we want to look at? Obviously there's the README, which is quite handy. It's also in the Git repository, and you can actually in Visual Studio Code, you can press Control K and V, is it? To actually preview it, which is nice, so you can kind of see all the stuff here. And then we have basically the instructions or any kind of information we want to do here is all here. Then we have the license, and I've decided to go with GNU General Public License version 3. So voila, there it is. That makes it so that it remains open source and available to people to use basically freely, as long as you keep it open source and the code that you contribute sticks with it. And everyone else is able to see that code too. So yeah. Then we have the git ignore. This was created by GitHub when I created the repository, and I told it was running on Python. So it's like, oh, here's some common Python stuff that might show up that we don't want in version control. I'll skip most of these. The one that you'll notice that we talked about earlier is the env file. So with that file, you'll be able to, it has all of your personal settings in it, so it automatically ignores that, which is really good. And looks like they take out the env environment directory as well. So I'm glad we stuck to that standard and didn't name it something else. So thank goodness. Anything else interesting here? Any kind of compiled stuff, it ignores as well. We don't need those, and that's true. Any Python files we don't need, like when we install something, it might have downloaded some packages or something like that. We don't need those. So because we use the requirements txt file to install them ourselves, and it's much cleaner that way, especially because these environments have different binaries depending on what you're doing. So I think that's it for the files. Oh, we have the templates folder. Now, if you initially look at it, you're like, oh, dear God, oh, how can I deal with all this? I'm going to die, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry, just ignore all that. Basically, I'm using Inkscape to do that. So I'm going a little overtime. Gotta show you all the files and then we can go. Projects. Live stream. There it is. Display that. And templates. And here it is, right? You can already see the preview there, which is cool. But I'm going to open it in Inkscape and show you what it looks like. And there she is. Just a really simple Inkscape file. I built it in just a couple of minutes, but it outlines a few key points. So first off, the design is really easy. I just kind of throw it together. I can manipulate and move things around as much as I like. And then, but you'll notice that the dynamic content has these little tags, and that's where the templating comes in. We'll talk about more about the templates as we move along and how to kind of work with them inside of the SVGs in another episode. But yeah, that's the basic premise here. You use these templates and then they're replaced with other content. And because we're using Inkscape, it has really cool features like for example, in this one, if I were to put normal text here and it was long, it would not wrap properly. But in Inkscape, I can make not just a piece of text, but a block area where the text wraps, which is super, super nice. And I can leave it there. And I'm not sure how to render all this stuff in the end, but I'm pretty sure I can figure it out. So it'll be fun journey, and I hope somebody who's watching this will want to join in on that activity too. Yeah, I can even go in and change, the reference of this image to something else when I make my template as well. So it's quite cool. So basically, it's an easy way to kind of build the template. I'm not worried so much about like rendering it at this point. I'm more about the methods and displaying a few pieces of text and kind of expanding on it slowly but surely. But yeah. This is kind of how I was thinking the templating system would work. Is have like this semi-graphical environment to build with and to construct our layouts and so forth. And I don't know if it's totally possible. There might be something that I'll do. Like, for example, I was thinking of taking, like, instead of this file, it would just be different modules, and I would load them up inside of HTML. And use them that way, but we'll see. I have no idea. That's the beauty of this project. I don't know where it's going to go or how it's going to work. I'm not using any databases yet, but maybe I will. I might use a different graphics engine or rendering tools. I don't know. We'll just see what happens. But anyways, thank you for joining me all the way through this first introduction of DisplayDat. And the live stream I'm hoping to do of the development. I might do this about once a week is what I'm hoping. It's my initial idea on Saturdays. And I hope that people will find some kind of benefit out of it, especially if you're a novice coder. I'm not the best coder in the world, but I can teach a little bit about what makes code so fun and interesting. Thanks a lot for your time. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.